Hey folks, Machinery Pete here. Pleased to be joined by our guest today, Wade Barnes, CEO and co-founder of Farmer's Edge. Wade, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today.
Hey, you bet. We are honored here to be helping get the word out on some big news for Farmer's Edge. Can you walk us through the big news there, Wade?
Yeah, we're going to be rolling out our Smart Carbon program. So we're really launching out our ability to work with farm customers to help them develop their offsets and find buyers for them, whether that be in a regulatory market or a voluntary market, to create some value. And we know that there's a lot of buzz around the carbon space, but it's at times not very clear. And so we hope to be able to provide some direction of what farmers need to do in order to create some value.
Yeah, that was really interesting when I heard the news, Wade, what you were coming with here, because again, all the talk about carbon credits and possible revenue and how's this all going to work. Sounds like you're taking it from the esoteric stage into rubber meets the road here.
Well, we've had some experience in the Canadian market previously, and so we were geared up in 2015 to utilize two different protocols that were being used in the province of Alberta. One being the conservation cropping protocol, which would be no-till, and the nitrous oxide reduction protocol. The nitrogen protocol really never kind of got off the operating table, and so we focused more on the conservation tillage side and had a lot of success of being able to create those offsets, develop them, and then get them to a large final emitter. So we have a pretty good handle on how to actually take this to market. Now, the carbon market evolves almost daily. There's a huge buzz around it. I would say that all the jurisdictions, on both sides of the border, are trying to find their way through this, and so are the farmers, and so are the aggregators. So it won't be 100% clear. I don't know if it will be for a while, but we believe that we've got a good handle to help guide farmers along to be able to actually get a transaction done to make a few dollars out of this.
Oh, that's exciting. And as a data guy myself, Wade, it just seems to me like your company, Farmer's Edge, kind of perfectly positioned here in this whole carbon space to kind of leverage who you are and what you've been doing. What would you say is if you're talking to people about Farmer's Edge, you guys main, or how you're different from other programs out there in the market right now?
Yeah, so we've built our program around guaranteeing the data collection just for the growers, because we need to be able to collect data, process that information, serve it back to them in tools that help them make decisions. It's a perfect fit for the carbon space because the carbon programs, regardless of protocols, regardless of which side of the border you're on, they're very data intensive. And as it's our belief that as you go into the voluntary market and you start selling these offsets to real credible buyers that are worried about their carbon footprint, you're going to have to be able to really validate these management changes, and data is going to enable us to do that. Now, in saying that, farmers are inundated with all this stuff, and they've got to have the business of actually farming. They got to put a crop in, they got to spray that crop, they got to get it off, they got to get it marketed. So carbon's going to be a little bit of an afterthought. And if we can make this really easy, but also put some meat behind this to increase the value of those offsets, then we're excited about that, and we think we can really help the growers.
Well, Wade, what is your approach to calculating carbon credits?
Yeah, so there's different methodologies, based on different protocols, and a lot of that is sort of connected to essentially the management practices that the grower is going to implement, the climatic conditions that they're in. When it comes to some of these nitrogen elements, about how much of the efficiencies that are actually calculated based on, when they applied fertilizer, how much they applied, where they put it, and the yields that come off of that. And so you'll see different, I'll call it, jurisdictions that will create higher carbon offsets based on where they are. So it's our belief that farmers in Iowa that might get more rainfall and use more nitrogen on corn crops will get higher carbon offsets than, say, a farm in the dry parts of Saskatchewan. So it'll be really area specific. And then I think, there's really two pieces right now. In the Canadian side, there's a voluntary market and a more developed regulatory market. In the US right now, it's mostly focused on the voluntary market, but there certainly is a lot of talk about more of a regulatory market coming in that generally is going to create more value. But the one thing that we know is that the voluntary market is picking up steam all the time, and with the buzz around carbon, if the carbon value today is between $15 and $20, I think the market's only going to go up. I don't think it's going to go down.
Well, as we learn about the process here, Wade, carbon credits, is this something farmers, can they do it on their own, or do they have to work with a company such as Farmers Edge? Are you guys there, or what? Again, just trying to get a handle on this.
I don't think you have to work with a company like Farmers Edge, and there's other companies that are out there that are working on this. And with the buzz around this market, there's going to be more and more companies that are going to be wanting to aggregate. So I would say that farmers will most likely have to work with an aggregator to actually help with the project and serialize it. If they don't necessarily need a Farmer's Edge to go and collect all this data. There's lots of other, good software packages, and farmers are working with consultants so that they can find their way to an aggregator. I would say that, some of the things that farmers will have to watch in the future is, what are you committing to long-term with some of these offsets with different companies? Because, at the end of the day, the farmer's got to do what's best for the farm. You can't focus on what's best to get a carbon offset. So as an example, if you're in an area that no-till struggles in, maybe it's a heavy soils with lots of rain, and you see a reduction in yield when you try to implement no-till. I don't think there's enough value in carbon to implement that management practice if the outcome isn't positive. So I think, people have to think about that again, you have to make the best management decisions for the farm. And if you can be able to create an offset based on what you're doing or the changes that you're making, then that's a great thing. But don't do something that actually injures or impairs the ability of the farm to get higher yields. And I think guys will feel that through. And most guys, I would say generally, if no-till is a good idea, they're already on the path of that already. And so the question is how do we work with the grower to create that offset? Because there's a lot of things that are connected to this permanence and the pieces around, are you creating more value around new practices? And so growers are going to have to think through that.
Well, that's interesting. You're talking about, farmers and their planning. On this topic, how do you ensure that carbon credits generated for farmland are permanent?
Yeah, well, and those are some of the challenges that are going to be fit within the protocols, and that's some of the issues that when you're thinking about signing up with a company, what are you committing to long term? And this is some of the value around having a strong data component, be able to kind of showcase that. And because a lot of the value creation around carbon offsets is going to be able to showcase to the buyers that these management practices have happened, and that you can validate it and verify it. Okay.
Now, on the topic of data, again, being a data guy myself on the machinery side, very impressed with, Farmers Edge, how you guys roll there. Wade, you tell me if I'm wrong on this stat, but 3.3 billion data points per hour coming through, what is it, like 100,000 farms or something like that?
Yeah, no, it's an amazing amount of information. It's between, whether it be on satellite imagery or weather stations, but the big intensive data set is, pulling that information from the equipment, whether it be as applied data, all the machine information, yield data, and it's when you have that many machines rolling, whether it be planting, it's a ton of information that's finding its way into the cloud.
Wow. Well, now back to the credits. And again, forgive me for not being up to speed on, I get pretty focused on machinery sometimes, but what about past credits, vintage credits? Can farmers, is there a mechanism or a way they can get paid looking backwards like that?
So again, it's very protocol related, but that's kind of what we're looking at. If you look in the Alberta market, farmers had the ability to look backwards over a period of time in order to get some value to some of the practice changes that they made. We think that that's going to be doable here in the U.S. market as well, and we're looking at it of implementing some of of developing our own protocol that's very focused around nitrogen and the ability to look back and bring some vintage credits, because farmers have been doing a really good job with nitrogen management for the last few years, and we want to be able to help them get some value out of that. So generally, these protocols are looked over a 10-year period. So if you can look back 2 or 3 years and then get some annualized value going forward, then that's exciting. Now, some of the view is that, if the market today is at $20 and you might be able to get 3 years and compile it into one, that's great. At the same time, are you better to go forward 10 years because will the carbon market continue to strengthen? Right. And that's some of the decisions that a farmer will have to make. But if you're a no-till farmer using strong nitrogen management practices with cover crops, there could be a significant amount of carbon offsets for you. And if you can reach back 3 years, it could be a little bit of a windfall the first year that you actually aggregate it and get those credits sold.
A windfall. Hey, sign us up for a windfall, right? That sounds good. If we drill this down, Wade, in someone asking you, hey, what are the main benefits of your smart carbon program? How would you answer that?
Well, I think again is there's multiple different benefits. One is that our smart carbon program is really attached to our smart nutrient program. So you're getting all the data collection, you're making good decisions on the farm, and then the byproduct of all of those decisions is the creation of the carbon offset, whether it be through nitrogen or no-till or cover crops. I think as we go forward, as we can start to establish credibility around those offsets, I think there's a huge potential around low carbon grain. If you look at food manufacturers right now, the consumer, there's a real focus on what they're buying and the carbon footprint. And I think that if farmers can utilize technology to make good decisions on the farm, utilize that technology to create carbon offsets, and then be able to brand themselves as a low carbon grain provider and attract different markets, because we really think that's going to emerge here in the future. That could create premiums and create new markets for growers. So we're super excited about that. I think the big part is that for food companies is how do they get access to low carbon grain with scale. And, I would say the grain companies at times, they buy grain from everybody. And so how do they segregate that? But if suddenly now you can create that connectivity to a farmer, to a food processor or a food company, and that he can prove that he's using these management techniques that are essentially growing his grain with a lower carbon footprint, that is going to create value to those farms. And I think that is pretty exciting. If technology enables the farmer to get closer to the consumer, that's a game changer for the farmer, because the farmer has always been sort of on the wrong side of this. There's always been a lot of people in the middle. And I think the consumer wants that connection to the farmer. And I think the farmer's got a great story to tell. I think the problem, what I get upset about when I hear a lot about sustainability or carbon or agriculture, there's a lot of finger pointing towards agriculture as a problem. And what people don't realize of how much actually happens on the farm to be a part of that solution and farmers aren't, they're not able to tell their story. I get excited where farmers can actually use data and information to actually validate all the things that they're doing. And if you have that, it's going to be hard to disprove it. And I think it's going to change the storyline. And man, suddenly now, if the consumer can get really comfortable with what he's buying, I mean, the demand is going to go up, and the farmers that are using these type of management practices and technology are going to get benefit for it.
Yeah, Wade, I think you nailed it right there. Changing the narrative. Very powerful. I'm glad you brought up low carbon grain. I'd been hearing the same kind of buzz around that. And also, could you address sustainable supply? Hearing also some kind of buzz there as well.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat connected too. I mean, we talk right now, carbon has all the air in the room, but the next carbon is going to be water, and I think that, again, a lot of the supply chain are focusing on what farmers are doing. And I think that, as farmers want to be sustainable. It's only good business. Nobody wants to put more fertilizer on a field than they need to, right? Nobody wants to burn more fuel than they need to. Nobody wants to till more than they have to. And I think that, again, if they can showcase that they're doing all the right things, I think that creates a lot of, I think the biggest issue around is ensuring that the supply chain can get enough grain that's grown in this way. And the biggest thing is being able to validate that. And if there's enough farms that are connected and are using technology, then I think it creates more of that supply chain, makes it easier for companies to go out and seek that out. And then I think it puts, the North American farmer in a much stronger position because, not only does the grain that we produce go domestically, I think it's going to create a really strong export market beyond just China. We know that Europe is really focused on this. And I think that North American farmers can go after that market rather than let Central Europe or Eastern Europe push into there. We, focus on what we can provide. And if we can provide real clarity around sustainability, I think we can win those markets.
Yeah, super exciting, Wade. On the topic of farmers and agriculture telling our own story, it's been, somewhat ambiguous. I think farmers, it's like, well, what can I do? I mean, you're developing tools here to play into this, the future, which we all see coming. It's very exciting. What would you say to a farmer? What would be the easiest thing they could change on their farm right off the bat here? I mean, when rubber meets the road again, to get paid.
Well, I think the validation is collecting the information of the things that you're already doing so that you can actually prove that you are making good decisions for the environment. I get concerned a lot of times that farmers that they're going to need to make changes on how they're farming. And I actually don't think that a lot of guys need to make a lot of changes. I think a lot of farmers are doing a lot of the right things now, but they have no way to verify that they've done it. And I think good data collection to validate the things that they're doing will go a long ways. And, whether it creates a carbon offset or not, at the end of the day, I think grain companies, food companies are going to seek out the growers that can provide the information to validate the good management practices that they're already doing.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense, Wade. Wrapping it up here for farmers out there listening, kind of leaning into this topic, carbon credits here. What can I do? Where's this going? I mean, what advice would you leave them with just in general?
Look, I would say one, farm to get the most amount of yield that you can, and think about carbon credits as a secondary opportunity. The second part is just be really careful of who you partner with in regards to carbon offsets. Make sure that you're not locking yourself into something that you can't deliver on. I think that to me worries me, because I think there's going to be a lot of people getting into this market that they're going to want to be able to take advantage of these offsets and sell them down the road at higher value. And then when the farmer has to adjust a management practice because of a certain climatic condition, I don't want the farmer to get trapped into something, or somebody to show up on their doorstep and say, hey, we've seen that you've done something different.
Right.
And that's sort of, now canceled the offset and we want to get paid. So I would say be careful who you work with on this, because some of these protocols and commitments are long term, and you need to be sure you know what you're getting into.
Well, that's great advice, Wade, and thank you for talking us through this topic. Foremost in agriculture right now, top of mind. And again, congratulations on the release of the Smart Carbon program. Now, if folks want to find out more information, I'm assuming they can hop on Farmer's Edge, your website.
Yeah, just go on our website, Google Farmer's Edge. There'll be information there for not just the farmers, but for buyers. Part of our strategy is not just create the offset with the grower. We want to seek out and go to buyers. We want to help those buyers with the story of the growers. We've got really strong growers that I think people want to hear from them of what they're doing. So we're trying to create that connectivity from the farmer to the buyer, but that information is all there. And also if you've got a connection to a Farmer's Edge representative, ask them about the carbon program. I'm sure they'll love to talk to you about it. And look, at the end of the day, we just like to say that we're going to help the farmers the best that we can. But if our carbon program isn't a good fit, then we certainly aren't going to push the growers into getting involved in it. But we really think that we can really help them if they're thinking about this. So.
Well, that's fantastic, Wade. I got to thank you for joining us today, and very educational and exciting. I love you're talking about empowering farmers in the ag community to tell our story and play directly into where this is going, tying to the end consumer. That is powerful, powerful stuff. And hats off to Farmer's Edge for your continuing to push the envelope and just help farmers in the process. So again, congrats on the launch of your Smart Carbon program.
Hey, thanks for having me, and look forward to talking to you soon.